Welcome to another episode of Relentlessly Resilient, where real people share real-life experiences and the tools they developed to move forward and live their best life. I'm Jennie Taylor.
And I'm Michelle Scharf. Today we have with us Nicole Martin. She is a friend of mine, and we've done some fun little things together. We traveled to Peru. We're heading to Belize in August. She is a little package and a whole ton of fun.
That's a good way to preface. I think a nice way of saying she's a little crazy, but we're going to have a little fun. So, all right, let's go.
I think my kids could say that about me, but I'm not little, so I'll go ahead and just own up to that.
The best part of that introduction was, frankly, the use of the word little. So let's stop there. I like that.
We'll just be good there. We're excited to have you today and to learn with you. For our listeners who are listening, this is part of a 3-podcast series discussing the topic of Alzheimer's. We had kind of our kickoff was a little bit of an overview and what the disease is, what caregivers might face, where they can reach out for resources in helping their loved one. But today you're here to share with us a little more personal view into what this disease is.
Yep.
I am, and I maybe want to take a step back because I think my hardest trial is really in losing so many of what I would kind of call the core individuals in my life, those who had anchored my life in kind of a relatively short time. So I'll get to my mom's passing from Alzheimer's, but really I was a daughter in a small family. My parents were divorced when I was 3. And so I grew up largely being kind of my mom's partner in crime. My older sister moved with my dad at one point. And so it was the two of us so much of the time. She was a single mom that entire time. And so I became, yes, her daughter, and she was a fantastic mom, but we were also the best of friends, even when we were young. And so many fun memories of us developing a really kind of unique and life-lasting friendship, which is why when I started to lose her to Alzheimer's, the one person in my life that mattered the most, it was the hardest trial. But what preceded that was my older sister sadly passed away from lung cancer in February of 2017.
Oh my goodness.
And this was... Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I'm just so sorry. I didn't know that either. I'm so sorry to hear that.
And, again, a small family. And so my mom and my dad had 2 daughters. So Lori was my oldest sister. And then in a successive marriage, they had another daughter. And so Tiffany was the sister that I had left at this point. My sister's passing was after my dad had suffered a heart attack. And his mind and body had never, and to this day, have never completely recovered. And so he feels in many respects gone to me, certainly the dad that I knew. And then, of course, at my sister's funeral, this was sort of the situation I wanted to paint at the start of this, was, after giving my sister's life sketch and trying to hold it together, I hugged my mom, who at this point was in the throes of Alzheimer's. And I just had to chuckle a little bit as she looked around the room with her happy face and said, "It's just so fun to see everybody here." Because, of course, she had no idea that it was her daughter's funeral that had brought us all together. And I thought at that moment, blissful ignorance in this moment is the only gift that Alzheimer's will ever give me, because it has certainly taken everything else from me.
Yep.
Oh, my goodness. Wow.
Oh, man. That's huge.
So can you tell us let's back up. Tell us your mom's journey. Was it sudden onset? Did you notice it? Was it gradual, or maybe something you kind of tried to brush aside at first? Tell us how you came to discover her disease.
I will, and I'll share with you a little bit just about who she is, just so you can understand her and me, frankly. At her funeral, one of the highlights for me was to be able to raise a colored paper teacup and give my mom a final fairy tea party toast, with everybody holding a teacup and all of us drinking apple juice. It was a ridiculously fun moment that was so much who she is and who I was, because in the worst of times, she found joy and frivolity and silliness. And it was such a way to honor her. And I tell you that because so much of what I think may have been early warning signs of Alzheimer's were just so much, I think, attributed to her quirky personality. And, forgetting things would be just her being busy. And I am that way too. And so, yes, I think a lot of what we might have recognized as early signs, you push off as other things. And frankly, we had a roadmap before us. There was no reason not to feel this. And she did. I mean, her dad passed away of Alzheimer's. And so, that was her biggest fear, was that she would develop Alzheimer's. And so it was this specter that has lived in our family for as long as I can remember. I remember taking my grandpa to a home. I remember him crying and asking not to be left there. So Alzheimer's has been in my mind as long as I can remember, and my mom's as well. And so when she started to show signs, and when she knew, more importantly, the last thing she wanted to do was attach the label of Alzheimer's to it. And so she honestly was never diagnosed. It was too hard for her to have that be a diagnosis in black and white. It was something we knew, it was something we accepted, but it was not something that we wanted to talk about because she was scared. And we understood, and we were scared.
Yeah. Well, so that kind of goes along with what we just spoke about in a previous podcast with Raven, who is the program director at the Alzheimer's Association. Denial is a big part of this disease, and it's a huge beginning point of this disease. They do say that there's a lot of things that we can do to help our brains, be better off to kind of stave off this disease. And of course, there are a lot of advances in Alzheimer's research that for medications and stuff like that to help delay the onset and the veracity of this disease. There's not a cure yet, but I'm certainly hoping that there is in our lifetime, because I don't want this. Jennie doesn't want it, and you don't want it, and I don't want any of my friends to have it.
And that's the challenge of it, right? Even as I'm grieving, and that's the sadness of it. This is not a grief that happens at her passing. This was a grief that started in 2015. This is a long suffering grief that hits you at the hardest times while they're still alive.
Right.
So you're grieving their loss little by little. And then when they finally go, it's almost as if you grieve it all again. It's very, very challenging. And then all the while, insert the kind of fear that you have in your own mind that what you are grieving is in fact a screening of what your life is going to look like, a preview of what, someone is going to have to do for you. And that's really horrible thought to have. And just as Jennie, as you pointed out, that is just not the way any of us want to go, to lose the vital memories that we've spent a lifetime creating and should be the one thing that we have left and can smile about at the end of the day. It just, for me, has to be the cruelest disease of all.
I agree. I agree with you 100%.
It's interesting. Two of my grandparents that passed away in my teen and young adult years on different sides of the family. My mother's mother, she was only 60. She got up that morning. She maybe had breakfast or a snack or something, sat down in her recliner chair to read, dozed off, and just never woke up. And then my grandfather on my father's side, who lived well into his 80s, a long, productive, difficult life, and yet he suffered with dementia at the end. And such a stark contrast to where my grandmother was gone too soon, 60, so young, and yet it was so quick and so peaceful. And then my grandfather, who lived, 20 plus more years, the other grandfather, and yet the deterioration not only of his body but of his mind, and the weight that brought. I know to my aunt, to my family members who were closer to him and providing that care and the assistance that he needed as they saw his memory go and his personality change. Nicole, can you take us back to 2015? You mentioned that was maybe the beginning of this battle, or at least what you knew of this battle.
Yeah, I think that's when you started to recognize that clearly this was not something that you could toss off as just, lack of sleep, that it was, you were seeing patterns as she lived in this small town her entire life and was finding herself getting lost, doing errands that she had done, 1,000 times before. She was forgetting key things. And what I noticed too was the way that she would compensate. So it was so hard for me to recognize in her that she knew what those failures were, but she was so scared that she was trying to cover it up. And so she would use certain mannerisms, diversion. So if you asked her a question and she clearly did not either understand it or know the answer, she would try these methods of, diverting the conversation to avoid this kind of awkwardness that I'm sure, and scary feeling of having nothing, having a void where something used to be there. I can't imagine how frightening that would be. And then for me, I think where it just became so apparent that she was gone, that the mom that I knew was really gone at that point was I had invited her to join us for Christmas. And she had come and I hadn't seen her. She lived in Pocatello. I lived in Utah. And of course, life intrudes and you never get to see the people you love as much as you want. And so I had specifically invited her here. And I watched her in a number of circumstances, not having been around her on a day-to-day basis. All of a sudden, the weight of the Alzheimer's became very apparent and what it had already taken from her while I wasn't looking, so to speak. We would give her presents and she would not open them. I would continue to hand her presents and it's like she didn't know what to do. She no longer knew what this sort of holiday celebration involved. I sat with her and went through her stocking with her. And please understand, my mom was the queen of Christmases. For a single mom that had no money, she managed to make Christmas a magical experience every single year. Stockings were a whole hour-long affair, every intricately wrapped jewelry and everything you could imagine. It was such a fun experience to open that stocking. And so I was trying to create the Christmas experience for her that she had done so many years for me. And what I realized was I had waited too long. I had waited a year or two too long to give her that because she was gone at that point. I remember things that you recognize with Alzheimer's. I had gotten her a couple of new shirts. And she would put them on and then she'd be gone and she would be back wearing the same kind of dirty shirt that she'd come with, because that's an Alzheimer's thing, right? I mean, that's it's a comfort thing for them. And for her, the black shirt was something that she had kept over from her mom. And so as the world of the person suffering Alzheimer's shrinks, they find comfort in, these things. Like for her, it was a black shirt. And so that is pretty much what I saw her in those last years, because that was what made her comfortable. And so that Christmas experience was me understanding that now it was about me just loving her and not expecting that much was left.
Oh. Nicole, how old was she in that 2015 Christmas?
Now, you did not tell me that math was going to be part of
Well, ish. How old ish? I mean, was she 60s? Was she 80s? I'm just trying to picture this.
Jennie always makes us do math.
I know. All right. For those of you
I'm also trying to, I'm going to let you laugh for a minute. We've been crying, so now we're going to like reset the tone. We'll take a break here. You think about the math. We'll take a break. When you come back, tell us about how old your mom was when she got Alzheimer's. I'm just trying to put a frame around it. That's all, you guys. Don't make fun of me and my math loving. Okay, we'll be right back. Okay, Nicole, how old was your sweet mom when you'd realized maybe you'd waited a year or two too long to find out that she now was battling the disease, Alzheimer's?
Well, despite what your teacher told you back in school, you do have a calculator ready, and I have used it to do the math here. So
call a friend.
My mom was 69 in 2015, so very young still.
And by then you said you were probably already a couple of years into it, maybe having not fully recognized what it was she was facing. Okay.
Yeah, looking back now, easily I would say that, as I look back in retrospect, I think about, a couple of her last jobs, for instance, and how much she struggled trying to learn the information. And, we attributed it to her not having a lot of tech savvy, which, by the way, I clearly inherited from her. But I also just think her mind was losing things, much less being able to bring anything new in. And so I think, again, it was much sooner than we realized, but certainly by 2015, she was largely gone. But I do want to reiterate that some of the highlights for me in those kind of ensuing years was the fact that Alzheimer's, while it took her memories and it took her silliness and her, her fun and all of the amazing things that were her, and she was a truly amazing human being. I say that as a daughter, of course, but I also just say that as one who recognizes that there are those amongst us who just are better than the rest of us. And she was one of those. She just lived on a higher plane. And so, to be able to have her in my life just really mattered to me. And I appreciated that gift.
That is so young. I think sometimes, when I was younger, 69 sounded, it might have been 150 years, but I think of it now. I'm 41. My baby is 3. I will be about your mother's age when she started to battle Alzheimer's, when my baby is, graduating high school and getting into college and some of those things, and not long after she's left my home. So can you tell us what that journey then looks like? I love how you said you knew then, you just now need to love mom. Beautiful. What does it look like day to day? I know you love her, but what are the challenges and the struggles that come from loving someone with Alzheimer's as they're deteriorating?
I think for me, it was forcing myself to have interaction with her. And that sounds horrible. And I want to explain it, because understand that I went through all of that conflicting emotion as well, because you have limited time. You know that you will beat yourself up for not taking that time. You also know that when you take that time, it will be the worst time of your week. It won't feel good. It will, I had to steel myself for those moments. I had to fake happiness. I had to try not to cry in front of her. And then I had to recover. And so you get to the point where you think, what am I getting from this? And what am I losing from this? And yet, fundamentally, it's your mom. And so what kind of person are you to not want to be around her? And so it's all of these conflicting emotions that now you're feeling guilty.
Yeah.
And so in answering your question, what I came to was, when I was around her, what I could still feel was love. And I knew that she didn't know who I was. She had no idea, but I knew that she knew that I loved her, and she knew that she loved me. And I still on my phone have a little video of her in that kind of last year. I'd taken her out to lunch and, gibberish. I mean, we were talking gibberish. And then all of a sudden she touched my cheek and she told me how beautiful I was.
Oh.
And I will always keep it. And again, that's what I knew was Alzheimer's could take everything, but that kind of nugget of love that just never extinguishes.
It is really interesting because there are these moments that are so beautiful where you're like, oh, there they are. It's like you get a window back to your person, but then it's gone again.
But it's a fleeting moment.
It's very fleeting. Yeah. And and they're far and few between. I mean, they don't happen every time you interact with them, but it's such a gift when it does happen.
Yeah, and I never truly felt like I got her back for a moment of clarity. I never did feel that, and I know that happens for some, and I wanted it. And so I think I also always felt a little cheated too. You go, I love setting up my perfect fairy tales. Again, my mom was such a lover of fairy tales, and I was raised on them, and her happily ever after was all she was ever looking for. And so in that spirit, I would go and visit her in the hopes that I would have that sort of dream moment where, she would break through and I could see the eyes clear and I would know she was there. So I never did have that. But like I said, I did feel the love. And so while the haze never left her eyes, I could feel the love. And for me, that was enough. And so it was trying to spend time with her, Jennie. It was trying to preserve moments with her, trying to honor her. And that's kind of where the mother-daughter photo shoot came in, was my opportunity to honor this woman who was and will always be the most important person in my life.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit more about that. Did you say mother-daughter photo shoot?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I had mentioned earlier that my sister passed away from cancer, and I mentioned as well that my mom was a single mom. And so we were a small little family, a small little nomadic family that moved around. And so there was a closeness between initially my mom, my older sister and I, and then when my mom remarried, my younger sister. But, we were moving around a lot. And so, to be able to, I just lost my train of thought.
The mother-daughter photo shoot. You're telling us how you lost your
Okay,
sister.
this is so okay. There you. Thank you. As I lose my memory during a talk about Alzheimer's,
okay.
How perfect and ideal. Yes, thank you.
That's okay. I think I was off on my math right now after you guys just made fun of me for asking about math, and then I did the math. Anyway, it just shows that sometimes life takes your basic brain function away for a moment. But I think that's important to note that in Alzheimer's, that is what makes it go undetected sometimes for quite a while, is there are certain quirks to our brain, or quirks to being so busy, or life being so chaotic that you might think, oh, it's just this, or oh, it's that, or oh, I can't remember because pregnancy brain, or I just lost my spouse, and so my brain's not functioning, or I'm going through a lot of stress at work. And yet you've discovered that a kind of memory loss that isn't reversible, and it's not fleeting, but it's more permanent. So you've got this great opportunity to do a photo shoot with your mom. Tell us about that.
And I want to get back to your point you're making about sort of this, I say it in jest, this forgetfulness, but we all know, and we've touched on it, that is really the biggest anxiety of seeing her pass from Alzheimer's, is again, just me getting it. So we have fun with it. We make fun of it, but it is in fact,
and yet it's terrifying, right?
It's terrifying. Absolutely. So mother-daughter shoot. Thank you for reminding me. So again, having lost my older sister, and I just happened on the talents of a woman who had done photo shoots. And so, just came to my mind that perhaps that might be something. And it was one of those situations where you go for a day, and they, of course, make you look glamorous. And then you take these, these memorable shots. And so I was hesitant to do it. I had reached out to my mom's husband, and he felt like, again, she wouldn't really be in a place where this would be good for her. And I mentioned Alzheimer's shrinks your world. And so when she traveled there towards the end, until we realized that was just no longer a possibility, it would scare her. So that Christmas that I mentioned that she was at my house, she's surrounded by people that love her. To her, it feels like strangers. And so she's scared. And so she called him a lot, wanting to come home. So when broaching this idea of the photo shoot, he, of course, is thinking, I'm not sure she's able to be out and amongst, kind of strange people, not knowing what's going on. Long and short, we decided to do it. And I have never been more happy about a decision in my entire life. That day and the thousands of times that I have watched the video after that and looked at the pictures have been a saving grace for me. And again, her eyes didn't clear as much as I would have liked. And I can see the effects of Alzheimer's. I can see bits of her confusion in it. But what I remember was a day where I got to make her look pretty. I got to take care of her. I got to honor the thing that mattered most to her, which was her kids. And we had, of course, Lori, my oldest sister, who had passed, was represented by a necklace that we were all wearing that was love written in her handwriting. And so it was a moment of celebrating the only thing that we could control in the midst of losing a sister and having a dad that's no longer mentally where he was, and, having a mom that we had already really lost, was to celebrate this moment of love and to capture it in photos and film. And it has been so comforting to me.
I remember when you did that, when you posted it on your social media feed, and I just thought, you could just see the love between the two of you, and it was so beautiful.
I hope you'll share some of those with us so that we can share them with our listeners, because I'm eager to see them, and I know those who are listening are as well. What a treasure. What a treasure to have that. Even and it's interesting because I bet if I look at the pictures, I probably won't see the confusion and the cloud that you see in your mother's eyes, where you knew her so well. I wonder if a stranger would notice that to the degree that you would.
I know it would be interesting, and I would be happy to share that, Jennie. And again, I would encourage anybody. I mean, if I had a takeaway, it was like, that was one of those things I did right. We don't do everything right when we're losing somebody by a long shot, but that was one of those things that I did right. And I'm proud of it. And, I'm glad that I didn't let the cost of it or the logistical challenges of it deviate me from the course that I now, like I said, will be a treasure for generations to come.
So we're going to put in a shameless plug for Take More Pictures. Whoever's listening, whoever you love, no matter how long you think you are going to live, take more pictures. My kids make fun of me because I take selfies of me with them all the time. But it's because I'm grateful my husband took a lot of pictures and things with the kids. And I look back, I lost my dad at a young age. I have maybe a handful of photos where we're even in the picture, even photos of him total. I mean, the 80s, it's not like we had cell phones running around in our hands. So take more pictures.
And more video.
And more video.
Voice.
Capture what you can capture, because long after they are gone, that can last. That can last for your children, your grandchildren, generations. So shameless plug for Document Your Life. Almost everyone listening right now has some smartphone in their hand almost 24/7. Take pictures. Don't wait for the perfect moment. But if you get a chance for the perfect moment, like Nicole and her mom said, then if you can find a way to afford it or have a friend help you make that possible, do that. Capture that. You don't realize how much your own memories will fade, even though you think you'll never forget. You'll never forget their voice. You'll never forget what they looked like or anything. Capture it. Use the technology we have to capture it as much as you can. Anyway, that's my side plug. We're going to take one more quick break and then come back. And Nicole, if you'll tell us what you've learned and continue to learn about your journey with resilience in facing what you faced and continue to face in your life. We'll be right back. All right, Nicole, teach us, what does resilience look like to you? What maybe have you learned about resilience that you might not have known 5 or 6, 7 years ago before your mom's diagnosis? And how does that resilience continue to carry you through what you face in your life now?
I appreciate your program. I appreciate the question because I love that there's an exit to the sadness. And I think that is a message everybody needs to hear, is there is eventually an exit. I remember so much being in the darkness and wondering if there would be an exit. I am traditionally, historically is a better word, a happy person. And in fact, the role that I played for my mom as a single, busy, working mom who had the world on her shoulders, but somehow managed to pretend that she didn't, was to be what she called her sunshine. And all of a sudden, I looked and found that I had become a person that I didn't even know anymore. When did melancholy become my new normal? The fact that it pairs well with black and makes me 10 pounds lighter is, an aside. But the point here was it wasn't me.
Pairs well with black. I love that.
But it wasn't me. And I wanted to be her sunshine again. If nothing else, I wanted to make her proud. I mean, this was a woman who really lived a life of regret, never really got any of the dreams that mattered to her, the happily ever after, and yet still managed to choose joy. And I saw it. I knew how unhappy she was with the way her life had gone. And I knew that outwardly looking at her, you would never know because she chose joy. And that was when I decided that I would choose joy, that I would burst out of this kind of darkness that I had cocooned myself in, and that recovery was my responsibility. And yes, I didn't have her anymore. And that sucked. And my life is not the same, not nearly as full, not as fun. But that doesn't mean that I can't do what she did. And that is to create a life of wonderment out of what I'm given. It seems so ironic to me that my sister passed away when she was 49. And I am in my 49th year. This is the only time I'll ever admit my age, by the way. But for me, it seems a significant year. When I turn 50 in March, I will have reached a milestone that my sister did not. And I am going to do that in a way in which my mom would be proud. And that is to live, live silly, live happy, to just do things that matter, to be in the moment. And it's, yes, in some respects, it's checking off a box, like going to Belize with Crazy Michelle. But it's also, meeting new people and connecting with new souls. Because, I will tell you, the last words that my sister spoke to me were of the people she loved and the experiences she would never have with them. And that is all that matters at the end of the day.
Yep.
My mom loved, in a little tribute to my mom, I have to do this. She loved Elvis. As a result, I love Elvis. He did a really great song called My Way, and it talks about the way you choose to live your life. And I love one of the lines in there where he says, regrets, I've had a few. Haven't we all had a few? But when you look at the grand scale of your life, it is beautiful. And we make it beautiful every single day when we choose to do so. Or we can wallow. And while wallowing is a place that is safe to be, it's just really no way to live your life.
It's not. And so there's no growth in that, right?
No. It's just misery there. And so, for me, it was just choosing to be the daughter that my mom would have wanted me to be. And that's helped me. But that's been, that's been a learning process. And I'm still going to take a long time to get to the point where I ever feel like I am recovered. I don't know that that's a word, but what I will say is I am learning and I am growing, and she would be proud of what I've taken away from her loss.
Absolutely. I remember when this all started to happen, and I was in the process of losing John. You were sharing some things online, but you weren't completely open with everything, but you could kind of see the stages of things happening. the biggest takeaway I noticed is Nicole was my respite on social media. So she is a sassy, funny, sarcastic, and she has the best meme collection. I don't know where she finds this stuff, but it's hilarious. And she's funny and she likes humor. And early in the stages of John being sick, I mean, I would literally log on and look up her name because I'm like, what can I laugh at today? Because my husband always made me laugh. That John was my connection to laughter in the universe. You know, he just made me laugh all the time. And you provided that for me. And I don't think I've ever really actually told you this, but I did. And I know a few times I would introduce people to you and I'd say, oh, and she's funny. You got to follow her on social media. But I don't think you really realize that sometimes you were my saving grace. It did become difficult because she started having her own trial. And I started seeing that laughter diminish and disappear for a time. And I realized that what she was going through was much larger than maybe what she was sharing online completely. And and it was hard for me. And we knew each other through social media, through politics, through, she's an incredible communications director and she's given a lot of great workshops, and I attended a few. So I didn't really have this personal connection with her at that time, but it was hard to watch, and it was hard to realize somebody else in the world is also going through this thing, and to realize it really impacts us, right? It impacted you in a way that maybe you weren't completely conscious of at the time. Mm-hmm. But for those of us who were also going through grief and also understanding these challenges when they hit us, we could kind of see you fall off that, like, nothing's funny right now. That's what it seemed to, the message was. It's like, it's just not funny right now. Like, it's real. It's real right now.
I think it's amazing that you could sense that. I love that shows human connection, even through technology, because you mentioned, while we're acquaintances, we're not close friends. Right. It's not as if we're talking, and you're not, frankly, the first person that said that to me.
Right.
I knew I was in a dark place. I had no idea that it showed, because I use humor as my unhealthy coping mechanism, I'm sure a doctor would say. And so that's typically the way that I manage to get through the tough times in my life, which I think, frankly, Michelle, is why I create a happy space online, because that for me is how I get out of those. But what I found interesting in what you said is grief recognizes grief.
Yeah.
You know, when we experience the most human of emotions, we become more human, and we want to help those that are going through the same. And I love that empathetic quality that comes out in us when we have to suffer. I mean, that is one of the silver linings of grief, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's kind of the purpose of this whole podcast is I want to show that we all need each other. Part of resiliency is building your tribe and building your support group. And you never know who that might be. And it may be someone that you wouldn't typically reach out to, or maybe someone you're intimidated to reach out to. But sometimes if you're aware of a similar circumstance or whatnot, people want to help other people. I get referred to other widowers often. I know this widow. She must be able to help you because I don't know what to do with you.
I will pass her on to you.
And I know Jennie does too. And we have our little friend groups of widowers. I think it's really important to, especially this pandemic has been dreadful. It's been hard. We haven't been able to connect. Even when we do connect, we're not standing near each other. We're not hugging. We're not touching. We are losing a part of our humanity through the trials that we've been through the last 18 months, whatever it is now. I've lost count. But I know for me, I was at an event this weekend, and it was so amazing that somebody came up and hugged me. And I was like, Oh my gosh, I'm being hugged.
Okay, so how fortuitous that I read this quote last night. I think you will appreciate this, by John Steinbeck. A sad soul can kill you far quicker than a germ. And I believe that is true. We need human touch and human connection, not only to heal, but just as part of the living experience. And we have in our hands the capability to raise people around us with the simplest of gestures. And I hope we choose to do that more now, particularly coming out of COVID.
Yeah, I hope so too. I know Jennie and I hope that for this podcast. I hope that we are touching people and that we help them figure out who their people are, where that they can gain support, and how to find connection. Because, the reality is you can't sit and wait for someone to come find you. You actually do have to go out and ask sometimes.
Well, I think so often we're waiting for someone to reach out to us, and yet we're unwilling to let them know we need to be reached out to. I joke about this. I'm probably an oversharer now in my life, but it's been 2.5 years since my husband was killed, 3.5 years since he deployed, and really my life started to fall apart right when he left, and just a number of things at home. I think maybe the greatest tool I've learned to pick up in that time is the ability to say, I need help.
Yeah.
Whether it's my stupid lawnmower that wouldn't start this weekend, so I had to ask my neighbor again to come look at it and fix it, or just being real on social media or texting a friend. A couple of weeks ago, I had such a hard time. I got to the point where I said, I quit. And I just quit today. Don't worry about me. I'm not going to quit forever. But I gave myself permission to quit in that moment, to feel what I felt, to not talk myself out of it. No, I think there's a difference between that and wallowing in it and staying there. But I think sometimes we're so bent on being happy and positive and faithful, or whatever the word you want to use is, that we don't let ourselves realize this hurts. This loss, this illness, this job loss, this divorce, this breakup, whatever. We could make a list a million miles long of the hard things people are facing today in their lives. And yet being able to say, this is really hard, this is really heavy. Can I either set it down for a minute, or do you think you could help me carry it? And that has been my biggest takeaway of how wrong I was about what I thought resilience was. I thought resilience was me getting stronger and stronger, which it is. We do get stronger, we get better, we get smarter about it. But really my greatest strength, or any smarts I've gained on my resilience journey, is realizing there is no need for me to pretend I can do it, or that I have to, or that I have the answers to everything. But being willing to say, hey, Michelle, hey, Nicole, isn't this terrible? Doesn't this just kind of suck sometimes? And now let's move forward. And how will we pick ourselves or pick each other up? So I appreciate you being willing to share this with us, and what you mentioned about never getting better from this, or I can't remember how you worded it. I'm never going to be cured of missing that person. You're never going to get over your mother's death, but you can live a happy, productive life dedicated to her honor and her memory. And I think that's so beautiful in what you've shared with us today. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
I love what you shared. And, we have another thing in common. My mom used to wake me up every morning and say, good morning, sunshine. So I was my mom's sunshine.
I think my kids would smack me in the face if I woke them up and said that.
And I wanted to. Every single day.
And if you knew how sassy both Michelle and I are, you would feel like only a mother would say that, because I doubt we're getting that label from anybody else.
And I wish
Absolutely.
I wish I could meet your mother, because she sounds like such a wonderful woman, and this connection you two have, for her to have raised such a spunky, sassy daughter, she's got a place in my heart, even without ever having met her.
Nicole is great.
Ladies, I want to say one last thing, because it's been a pleasure to talk to you. One thing I want to say is, I was listening to what you learned and how you were defining resilience, Jennie. I think for me, if I wanted to say sort of one takeout from this, what I have learned, or what I'm continuing to learn, is too much of life is lost in the quote unquote correct living of it. I love when you share the just feeling of emotion. When it is time to feel grief, feel it and dive into it. And then when it is your time to be ecstatic, enjoy that and feel everything that comes when it comes, and don't expect that you have to do it a certain way. We're all just making it up as we go along. And what I'm learning more than anything now is just to live in every moment that I have been given that those I loved were not. It's a gift. It is. And while trite, it is that.
I know. On that same note, I was thinking exactly when Jennie was talking about that earlier. We kind of live in a world of like, everything's got to be so happy. We've got to be so positive. So go, go, go. So live an Instagram life, a great this, a great that, great food, great vacation, great whatever. And it seems like it is actually an unrealistic expectation for anyone's life, but that's not how we actually live. It is so important to give ourselves those down days. And I know you've had a few of them recently, Jennie.
And to give them to each other.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And not try to fix it. I say that all the time. Just help me face it. Please stop trying to fix it, because that's so annoying when you want to fix my problem that I already feel like I can't fix. So for you to show up and act like you can fix it in a second feels like I'm a failure. Let's face it. Let's just face it together and stop trying to fix everything.
Well, and sometimes there's not a solution or not an immediate. There's not an immediate one.
A lot of times there's not. I mean, particularly if you're talking about a disease or a death, there's no solution I can find that's going to bring you back.
Right. But we are going to feel that sadness, and it's okay. And in fact, in order for us to move forward, we have to feel that sadness. You know, I've shared a little bit about this before, but not in detail. But I was drinking a lot right after John passed away, and because I didn't want to feel anything. And someone said to me, Michelle, you're going to have to feel this someday. You can choose to feel it now, or you can pile up the grief and feel it later. But at some day, you have to pay the price, and you have to feel your feelings.
Yep.
And, what's crazy about that is I've always been willing to do that. It's just that with this and losing John was so huge, and it was something I never anticipated would happen. And it's true. We all have to get to that point. So positivity is great, and it's always great to find that support. And there are going to be plenty of times to laugh and smile and move forward. But we really do have to pay that price. And it's really important to acknowledge that.
Yeah. Nicole, thank you. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for reminding us there's no one correct way to live or to grieve, to laugh, or to do any of these things, but to just embrace it in the moment. Thanks for teaching us. Like I said, this topic, Alzheimer's, is one I think we don't talk about enough in our culture, even though most of us probably know or are connected to someone who at some point will really suffer from this. So thank you for raising that awareness and being willing to share your personal story. Thank you to our listeners for joining us today. We hope that you'll stay with us and follow this series of some Alzheimer's discussions. And as always, if you or someone you know has a real life story about some of the real struggles you're facing, we'd love to hear from you. You can find us on Facebook at Relentlessly Resilient and on Instagram at Relentlessly Resilient Podcast. Reach out. We'd love to share your story with our listeners as well.
And remember, whatever you do, be kind. You never know the struggles others are dealing with. Thank you. Have a great day.
Good to talk with you.